So this is just a quick video about the Bosch RA1181 router table. I picked this up about a week ago and finally got around to putting it together, and had read a lot of the reviews that did mention that there were issues with the surface being not so flat, front to back or side to side, especially across the insert plate where you mount your router. When I first assembled it, I did notice that there were some discrepancies, especially in the insert plate. Mine unfortunately was concave, which apparently is worse than being convex, because as you pass pieces through the router, when you have a dip, you can cause a lot of inaccuracies as you're passing material through. So I read the instructions and I think there's something missing there, because I was able to figure that leveling issue out with a few steps that probably should be mentioned in the manual. So the manual mentions to use these 8 leveling screws to level up this plate before you put the router in, and then you install the router with your mounting screws here, which can, the weight of the router can also affect that, but it will, once that router's in there, you play with the leveling screws again. I still had a dip across the middle. We're using this this large flat edge I have here. I was getting probably a 32nd of an inch dip across the center, which they claim is within tolerance, but you know, I wasn't too happy with that, so I decided to play with something. So the final step, they say then, is once you've got those leveling screws in, or to put these locking nuts and bolts in to fasten the plate properly into the router table permanently. But what I was thinking of is when I do that and I fasten these down, these leveling screws become a pivot point. So if I was to individually work on each leveling screw, and then use these screws and nuts to almost flex the insert plate into being level, that might fix the problem, and sure enough it did. So I think what you need to do is, before you mount these screws and nuts, go ahead and individually check the level against each leveling screw to each 8 points. Get that as perfect as you can. My plate was incredibly wobbly after I did that, because the plate not being true, when I leveled each individual point, the whole thing was out and quite wobbly. But then as soon as I put these screws and nuts in, I was able to flex the plate by that 32nd of an inch to flatten everything out. And as you can see now, like, you know, right across the front there, there's absolutely zero gap. It's perfectly flush. There's no rocking. I'm really happy with how that turned out. So additional step for the manual in Bosch. Bosch says to just loosely tighten up these screws after the fact once you've leveled it. I don't think you're going to have much luck doing it that way. You really have to do that. And I did some fine tuning after the fact, which was to just play with these leveling screws a little bit with the fixing screws in, back out the fixing screw, back out the leveling screw, then tighten the fixing screw back in. And that's how you can make some fine adjustments to get your table absolutely perfectly set up. And give it a shot. I think you'll be pretty happy with the results. Thanks.